Hi, welcome to Author Spotlight. My name is Lucy, and this is the program on AADL TV where I take some time each episode to focus on the works of one author. The author that I will be shining a spotlight on today is a woman named Sara Nović. She has written 3 books and numerous articles. 2 of those books are fiction, and those novels are what I'm going to focus on today because, as you will hear, there is so much in both of those books. Sara Nović holds an MFA from Columbia University, where she studied fiction and literary translation. Her first novel, Girl at War, was written in 2015, and it won the American Library Association's Alex Award and was a finalist for the Los Angeles Times Book Prize. She is an instructor of deaf studies and creative writing and lives in Philadelphia with her family. And Sara Nović is herself deaf. So her first novel, as I mentioned, is called Girl at War, and it was written in 2015. And the opening line of this book is, "The war in Zagreb began over a pack of cigarettes." And that's where the book starts. It's 1991 in Croatia, and Ana Jurić is 10 years old. She is sent to pick up some cigarettes for her parents and her parents' friends. And she gets to the store, and the man selling the cigarettes asks her if she wants Croatian cigarettes or Serbian cigarettes. She's never been asked this question before, and she doesn't know the right answer, but she knows it's important that she answer correctly. She doesn't realize how politicized that answer is at the time, but she knows she wants to get it right. So she leaves without cigarettes and runs home, and her parents explain she should have bought the Croatian cigarettes. So this is a time in this area where we are at the start of the Yugoslav wars. And for Ana, this is not something she really pays attention to. There are different ethnic groups living in Croatia, but it's not something that she notices as a 10-year-old. She has a best friend named Luka. They like to bike around the town square. They play pickup football with their classmates. Everyday 10-year-old life. But after the cigarette incident, Ana does start to realize that things are changing a little bit. And we get the first part of this book from Ana's point of view when she is 10 years old. She says, "In school, we've been taught to ignore distinguishing ethnic factors, though it was easy enough to discern someone's ancestry by their last name. But now it seemed the differences between us might be important after all. Luka's family was originally from Bosnia, a mixed state, a confusing third category. Serbs wrote in Cyrillic and Croats in the Latin alphabet. But in Bosnia, they used both, the spoken differences even more minute. I wondered if there was a special brand of Bosnian cigarettes too, and whether Luka's father smoked those." Ana pictures these different features of people on a map of Croatia, sort of indicating to her which group is fighting where. And then there's this group she can't account for, which is a group of bearded men, and they are in mismatched uniforms. So all of these factions keep getting added, and as Ana can't keep straight or make sense of who's fighting who and why, it also is difficult as a reader to make sense of who is fighting and why. The fighting picks up, and there begins this era of air raid warnings, trips to bunkers, waiting for something to happen in their city of Zagreb. And something that Sara Nović does really well in this first section with Ana is points out the mundane aspects of war. Like, Ana and her family are still going through their days, but they're waiting for something to happen, something that they know is impending. And at the same time, this is an unusual war because they can watch it unfold. Ana says, "As a side effect of modern warfare, we had the peculiar privilege of watching the destruction of our country on television." So it's almost like you can see what's coming. And it's also at this time that Ana's younger sister gets sick, and sicker and sicker and sicker. She's really sick. Nothing will help her get better. She's just a baby. And Ana's parents realize that her sister needs to get care in the US. So they cross the border into Bosnia to see a doctor in Sarajevo who will send Ana's sister to the US, where a temporary foster family waits for her. And Anna's mother and father, and Anna have to leave her there with the doctor. It's pretty heartbreaking. Anna has insisted on going with her parents so that she can say goodbye. Her parents initially did not want to bring her. And the scene just shows the difficulty of leaving a child behind, and one of many children left behind at this time. So as Croat's trying to return, everything changes for Anna and her family. They are trying to cross the border back into their country, and there is just a heartbreaking scene where all of a sudden Anna, this 10-year-old, realizes all at once that there is a distinction between the Serbs and the Croats. And that's the first part of the story that we get from 10-year-old Anna's point of view. Then we move to a different time, 2001, and Anna is a student in New York City. She is being asked to speak at the UN about her experience as a child in war. Anna says, "In America, I'd learned quickly what it was okay to talk about and what I should keep to myself. In the beginning, adults operating somewhere between concern and nosiness had asked questions about the war, and I spoke truthfully about the things I'd seen. But my descriptions were often met with an uncomfortable shifting of the eyes, as if they were waiting for me to take things back and to say that genocide was actually no big deal. Their musings about how and why people stayed in a country under such terrible conditions were what I hated most." And so Anna learns to keep that part of herself completely secret. And she goes to school. None of her professors know about this past part of her life. Her boyfriend, Brian, who she's been with for 3 years, knows nothing. And in this segment of the book, we learn about her life after 10, when she was raised in the US. She went to stay with the same family that her sister had been adopted by. We see what those initial years were like for her, coming from this war-torn country to this family in the Midwest in America, and how different that was, and how little her trauma was really examined at that point, and how that might have affected her memory of what actually happened. She has a lot of trouble in school because she doesn't understand the language, and she is also just being thrown into a world that's so different from anything she knows. This trouble is really only tolerated for a short period of time, and she understands that the grown-ups around her are losing patience. She says, "I know my time for grieving was running short. People were getting impatient. It wasn't their fault. It was near impossible, even for me, to contain Gardenville and Croatia in the same spot." So this 10-year-old has in her mind these two very different worlds that she's trying to balance, and figure, does she have to give up the memories of one to be able to exist in the other? And so she goes through high school. She goes to New York, starts to keep these secrets. But when she is speaking to the UN, everything gets stirred up again. All the parts that she has never resolved, those memories that sort of got darkened by not really addressing her trauma, just start to haunt her, and she's having terrible dreams. She wakes up screaming and crying. At this point, her boyfriend wants to move in together, so she feels like she has to tell him the truth about her, and he's very accepting. He's very kind, but he still wants to move in together, and he can't understand why that is an impossibility for her right now. That's something that she can't do. She can't get close to him in that way, and she doesn't want to have someone there witnessing her insomnia and her terrible dreams when she does fall asleep. And like the people when she first moved to America, her boyfriend starts to lose patience with her and her emotions about the situation that she grew up in. So Anna decides that she has to go back to Zagreb to see if she can find out what happened to the people who took her in when she was 10 years old before she came to this country, to see what happened to her friend Luca, and just to see if she can sort of get some closure or bring back some of what she needs to remember in order to move on with her life. She stays with Luca when she goes back there, and we learn through Anna about just the immense loss for people at that time, and the very complicated history about who might have been on the right side of things and who was killing who. And the answer for the people living there is really everybody and no one. And it's really difficult for Anna because she is angry. She's so angry about what she learns, but she doesn't know where to place it because the backdrop of her childhood is very murky, and the backdrop of this war. This third section of this book keeps us in this same area, but it goes back in time again to after Anna has tried to cross the border with her parents, and she is being raised in a town that is in the middle of warfare. And we learn about this other aspect of warfare, which is children learning to fight, not as child soldiers, but just as a way to protect themselves. And because it's going on all around them, it's impossible for them not to get involved. So she befriends this group of boys. They have this place called the Safe House, and they arm themselves, and they go out and they patrol, and they are involved in the situation around them. But then this is interspersed with scenes of them just being kids and playing cards, and then engaging in a gunfight, and then playing cards some more. And this is one of the most powerful things, I think, about having this child narrator in this book, is that you see at the time what was so normalized for Anna as a 10-year-old. And then because it was so normal that when we meet her when she's in college, we understand why it's difficult for her to realize how traumatized she might have been by the reality of what she was experiencing. It's also just this viewpoint of what war looks like to a child. In a 2016 interview with Sara Nović, she says the child's point of view also afforded the reader the ability to learn about the war alongside the narrator, which was helpful in a war as complex as this. Additionally, Anna initially has a simplified understanding of what happened in the war, and that gets complicated when she returns as an adult, which I think is also an important component of understanding this or any war. Another thing that's so strong in this book are the details, ranging from big world picture to very small daily tasks. In that same interview, Sara Nović talks about her research, and she said she was doing silly research, like what was the weather on a given date. I don't know why, but that felt important to me and would change the way the characters experienced an event. That war can be very boring, repetitive, a lot of sitting or standing in line, waiting, rationing everything is not part of the narrative we get from the news. They cut out all the boring bits. And this book does balance that with the horror and the terror. This level of detail also appears in Sara Nović's second book, that sort of big ideas and small moments. Her second book is called True Biz, and this came out in 2022. True Biz is an adjective or an exclamation in American Sign Language, which can mean a number of things. It means really, seriously, definitely, literally. And True Biz takes place at the River Valley School for the Deaf in Ohio. This is a fictional school, but Sara Nović has said that it is like many schools for deaf children. In an article about this book, Nović explained that as a teenager, she never encountered any deaf characters in anything she read. And this book is truly an antidote to that. It is filled with a diverse group of deaf characters, teenagers and adults alike. Some of these deaf people sign, some read lips, some have cochlear implants. So we're really moving away here from just one isolated deaf character who seems like a tragic figure in a world of hearing people. As a girl at war goes back and forth in time, we get a little of that non-linear aspect in this book as well, and we get 3 points of view. The first point of view is from a woman named February. She is a coda, which is a hearing child of deaf adults. And she exists in a space because she grew up with deaf adults where she feels she's of deaf culture, but she's also a hearing person. She is the headmistress at River Valley School for the Deaf. So she spends her time, for the most part, with deaf people. February and her wife live in a house that is provided by the school, and February's mother lives there as well with them. They're struggling to take care of her mother as her mother sort of descends into dementia. February is also being slightly tempted by the return of an old lover to her school. This woman is now teaching there, and this understandably makes February's wife a little bit concerned. Another point of view we get is from a girl named Charlie. She is new to River Valley School. She has been in public schools, and she's been really the only deaf person in her experience. Her parents are hearing, and she got a cochlear implant at a very young age. She's been completely isolated from the deaf community, and because of her cochlear implant and her hearing parents, she is expected to perform complete normalcy in the hearing world. And she has this cochlear implant that is faulty. She reads lips. Her parents are told early on not to teach her sign language, that ASL would be, and this is a quote from the book, a cheat code, a crutch. If she had learned sign and could communicate her needs and understand others, what would motivate her to learn English? Charlie's doing very poorly in her public school, and her parents are divorced and having a bit of a custody battle over her. And through this, she is able to transfer to River Valley. Austin is a student at River Valley. He comes from a multi-generational deaf family. His grandparents are deaf. His mother is deaf. His father is hearing, but most of his other family members are deaf. And his family is known in this town in Ohio, where the school is, for being this pillar in the deaf community, and how it's really a point of pride for them, and how it's important to the community because deaf families like Austin's are able to keep schools like River Valley running and able to keep this deaf community strong. Charlie gets to River Valley and she starts to learn ASL. Her father is also learning it alongside her. She is a really good window for any readers who don't know ASL into all the nuances and the layers of this language besides just speaking with your hands. She also starts to learn about the deaf community, deaf culture, and also gets the history of deaf culture. The lessons that she receives, the actual lessons of ASL and of deaf culture, are interspersed in the text as part of this textbook from her class, and they are illustrated by a woman named Brittany Castle for the book. And so we really get a visual of what the signs are, but not only what hands do, but what faces do and how bodies are moved to convey different things, to convey different people in a story. The difference between small shifts in facial expressions and how much that changes the language. Charlie's also introduced to new technology at the school. There are so many apps available to her that she never knew about. There's a way through video for her to speak on the phone with people. There are just so many things that she has been completely disconnected from. And it is a real shift for her. Being the only deaf person that she knew, she was always taught that the burden of communication was on her. It was up to her to try and understand what everyone around her was saying. This book, True Biz, really does a good job of showing how it is ableism that is the problem. Charlie starts to be enlightened about this as well and is angry. But being part of this deaf community and being friends with Austin, she learns that deafness is not a disability. It's a cultural trait. And there is a community and a culture for whom deafness is an identity. This book was in part inspired by a true case against a company called Advanced Bionics. In 2003, they warned that the cochlear implants that they had created were prone to leaking and getting moisture in the device. And this was pretty harmful to some of the people with those cochlear implants, children and adults. They experienced things like shock, convulsions. They were vomiting. But in spite of that, the company continued to sell these cochlear implants until 2006. And it later settled with the FDA and then some of the recipients as well. So though this book is not that direct story, that is definitely an important piece of it. Nović is a deaf rights activist. And in this book, we learn about the deaf rights movement and some bigger protests that happened in history, the issues that are still affecting the deaf community, including education inequality. The characters in this book, Charlie and Austin and February, are all struggling with pieces of their identity and just trying to figure out what world they fit in and how to align worlds. Austin is surprised when his parents have another child, a little girl who's born hearing, and he's actually extremely disappointed because his father is hearing. Austin feels like he's now going to be pushed to the side, and he will become something different to his father. He will become a deaf child. He will become the child that is othered and marginalized because of this hearing child. So he is also experiencing this anger and this confusion about where he belongs. Going back to Girl at War, we also get this piece of living between identities. For Anna, she really is hiding part of who she is, a little bit from herself and from the people around her, and she has to rediscover that and figure out her place. The books are so different in their subject matter. They're both so well written and so comprehensive. They are both highlighting people who are ignored, people who are neglected, people who are cast aside, people who are misunderstood, and showing different ways of how those people can start to turn that around or how those people manage that in their lives. Girl at War and True Biz will really stay with me for a long time, and I can't wait for Sara Nović to write something else. Her writing is just so powerful. So I hope that you read one or both of these novels by Sara Nović. Thanks for joining me.